The title of tonight's talk is Mutual Care, Sure Security. When I first announced my intention to become a monk to my mother, she burst out in tears and asked me, who is going to take care of me? In Karaniya Metta Sutta, in the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha talked about loving kindness, and he used the simile of a mother's love for her only child. A mother's love for her only child is so great that she would even sacrifice her own life for the child. And yet there's a difference between metta or loving kindness and a mother's love for her only child. Perhaps you could say that they are similar in some extent because both are unconditional. Metta or loving kindness is unconditional in the sense that when one really radiates metta to another person or another being, one does so without thinking of wanting anything else in return, which is quite different from carnal love, where one loves another person because one wants love in return. I love you, you love me, that sort of relationship. A mother's love for her only child may not necessarily be mutual in the sense that she has unconditional love for her child. I think many mothers around here, you will know that children or newborn babes are totally helpless, right? And you have to care for them and feed them in many ways. And newly married couples know the nightmare of sleepless nights because baby would wake up in the middle of the night and start yelling and howling and you would all be very sleepless. Next day you go to work in a groggy state of mind, right? And yet people have children one after another, and there is love for children, an unconditional sort of love, and not really wanting anything back in return. One of the Buddhists that I know in Kuching once told me that having children means dana all the way, right? You keep on giving and giving and giving. Despite this sort of unconditional love for one's children, there is a certain degree or very strong degree of attachment involved in a mother's love, which is in contrast to unconditional loving kindness that does not have any form of attachment. The sort of attachment that a mother has for her child is also seen in my mother's response or reaction to my announcement to become a monk. Even though mothers take care of their children without hopes of wanting things in return, deep inside there is a hope that they will take care of them when they become old, right? Before I renounced the world and people knew about it, some people came to talk to me and said, well, why don't you get married? Why do you want to become a monk? There are many fishes in the sea, thinking perhaps that I got jilted by my girlfriend or something. And I told them, what's the point of getting married? I said, well, to perpetuate your clan, and it's a Chinese belief. And secondly, to get children. If you don't have children and you're old, who's going to take care of you? So that seems to be a form of security for people also, to have children, so that when they get old, they will be taken care of. But is that certain? Are you sure your children are going to take care of you when you get old? My father was a very pragmatic man. He knew human nature, and although he sacrificed a lot for our education, he always told us, I'm making plans so that I won't have to depend on you. So he always has his savings in case anything happens, they can be self-sustained without relying on children. Well, that's only in terms of financial security. But even if you have financial security, you still need someone to care for you when you are old. But children are not a guarantee. Many years ago when I was in Burma, in 1993, 94, I heard about something that happened in Singapore. It seems that the society had become so materialistic that young people were losing certain moral values of filial piety, to such an extent that the Singapore government decided to introduce religious or moral education in schools. After several years, it seems that it did not work. Eventually, the government had to make it a law that children must take care of their parents. It seems that if children do not take care of their parents, the parents can actually sue them, and that the children can actually be brought to court and be fined or imprisoned. Okay, it has come to that extent. 2 years ago, when I went to Singapore this time to give some Dhamma talks and to conduct a Dhamma camp for some university students, I asked this question to the Singaporeans, and they said, yes, actually this happened. Religious education was introduced in the schools, thinking that it would help to raise the level of moral values. However, the Singapore government had to put a stop to it because the Christians were too aggressive. It seems to be a main reason why we put a stop to it. And so they had to introduce legislation to ensure that children take care of their parents. Also, when I was in Singapore 2 years ago, I met a retired lecturer, and she told me that some of her students questioned this legislation. Although it protects the interests of parents, one must also question, what if the parents were irresponsible parents and they did not take care of the children? So would the children be obligated to care for them when they are old? That's a question mark. The point that I'm trying to make is that even caring for children does not guarantee that you'll be cared for when you are old, and that children are not a sure sign of security for you. Talking about children, in the old days, the Chinese are very pantang to have daughters. They love sons. But nowadays, I think times have changed. Even in India, at one time, King Pasenadi of Kosala was given the news that Queen Malika, his favorite consort, had just given birth to a daughter. And he felt very disappointed. When the Buddha heard about this, he uttered a few verses. I don't know whether the king was consoled by the Buddha's words. Okay, let me read to you Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. A woman, O Lord of the people, may turn out better than a man. She may be wise and virtuous, a devoted wife, revering her mother-in-law. Unquote. This is quite telltale. After people get married, it seems that there could be some friction between the mother-in-law and the wife. So a devoted wife could in the end turn out to be someone who could revere her mother-in-law. Okay, let me continue. The son to whom she gives birth may become a hero, O Lord of the land. The son of such a blessed woman may even rule the earth. Unquote. That was how the Buddha consoled King Pasenadi when he heard the disappointing news that he had just got a new daughter. A few years ago in Taiping, one of our supporters' wife gave birth to a child. Now, this lady had a lot of problems during childbirth. It seems that the baby refused to turn, so she requested for help from us, and so we chanted the Angulimala Parita. Have you heard of the Angulimala Parita? It seems to be very effective, you know. We just chanted it 7 times and gave her a bottle of blessed water. And then in the morning she went for a scope, and they found out that the baby had not turned yet. So after she drank the water, she went back in the evening for another scope, and the baby had turned. So if any of you have childbirth problems, make sure you recite Angulimala Parita, or get your husband to do it for you. Alright, anyway, she gave birth to a child, and that child turned out to be a daughter. One day, the father was driving us back from the monastery, and so I asked him, so, now that you got a daughter, how do you feel? And he said, well, I already got one daughter. Of course, now I wish for a son. Then I told him, these days having a daughter might be a boon and having a son might be a curse. You look at the schools nowadays, how are the girls doing and how are the boys doing? The boys are all playing truant, going to enjoy themselves, fishing or playing, going to the cyber cafe, playing with internet, playing computer games. But the girls are the ones who are hardworking and they are studying very hard. I think that recently a survey was taken and they found that the percentage of successful schoolgirls far exceeds that of successful schoolboys. So nowadays things have changed, and even you have heads of states who are women. So getting a son is not as lucky as getting a daughter these days. But then, if you have a very smart daughter and you support her to university, she gets very highly qualified, become a professional accountant or an architect, and finally she might end up being just a homemaker. This is what happened to one of our devotee's daughter in Taiping. This old couple led a very hard life, and they worked very hard and made a lot of sacrifices and sent their children abroad. And I think about 10 children, all of them were all professionals, And one of them became an accountant, got married to an engineer. An engineer became a millionaire. And so she ended up being just a homemaker. So the father said, if I had known that you would end up just being a homemaker, I would have used the money that I spent on you to buy a few hundred acres and plant oil palm and get rich. So in the end, children are still not a sure source of security. Generally, it seems that the fear of insecurity is pretty strong in women. But it doesn't mean that men do not feel insecure. To give you a good example, in Sasnaraka Buddhist Sanctuary in Taiping, it's supposed to be a monk training center, and we have this twice-yearly program called the Introduction to Monkhood program. And prior to that, also, we have had people who expressed interest in wanting to renounce the world. They come to SBS, stay around for a while to taste the monastic life. And recently, because of our Introduction to Monkhood program, or IMP as we call it in short, those who participate in IMP, we call them impians. Some of these ex-impians also express interest in wanting to renounce the world. Now we have two problems. One is if they are young people, they tend to get objections from their parents. Chinese parents are not very happy when you want to become a monk for the reasons that I talked about earlier. They want to see a perpetuation of their clan. They want to see grandchildren, right? Then secondly, the problem lies with middle-aged men, those who have made a career for themselves, those who have made a fortune for themselves. They want to renounce, and yet they fear that all the money and all the fortune that they have made will be gone to waste. Or they fear that after they renounce, what if they don't make it? What if they don't feel happy in monastic life and then they decide to go back to the world? So what are you going to do? That's because in SBS, we have a certain procedure involved to gain full ordination in our sanctuary. First, you have to observe 8 precepts as a postulant for 1 year, at least. That's a time for mutual assessment, for the candidate to assess us and for us to assess the candidate and to see whether we are suitable for one another. After 1 year, and the candidate decides to become a monk, to renounce the world, then he must get rid of all his property. Whatever property that is in his name must be transferred to whoever he wants to, next of kin or whatever. So that is a very big step to take. But we give them 1 year to think it over. And as a concession, after they have decided to renounce, they still have to go through another period where they become samaneras or novices. And that duration is also variable depending on the individual. It may be 1 year or less. If it's not really very certain then he can still make a PA, a power of attorney, to somebody to handle his affairs while he is a novice. But eventually, before he takes higher ordination as a bhikkhu, he must relinquish all his property. Nothing must be in his name. So that is the main thing that is deterring middle-aged people from becoming monks. Insecurity. So men also have fear of insecurity, not only women. They're afraid that what happens if I don't make it? I want to go back to the world. How am I going to survive? However, even though you have all the wealth in the world, you got a lot of fortune, you got a lot of property, that is also not a guarantee that you're going to get security. Right? I'm sure you've heard of cases of very rich people who can have everything material that they want, but who still feel unhappy and who even commit suicide. Many years ago, there was this American millionaire recluse by the name of Howard Hughes. A very famous multimillionaire, very reclusive, stays by himself in his own heaven, his own castle up in some secluded place. He felt so unhappy that he committed suicide. And coming to a local scene in Penang, perhaps you would have heard of the rags to riches multimillionaire. He also had a son who fell in love, it seems, with a bar girl, and because his love was not consummated, he also committed suicide out of heartbreak. So you see, even wealth and fortune cannot be a guarantee for security. Even though you may not go to the extent of committing suicide because of unhappiness, what if you suddenly find out that you have cancer? What if you suddenly find out that you have coronary disease, one of those degenerative diseases? How is money going to help you? You can go to see all the doctors in the world, and yet you may not be cured. Let me give you an example. This is a very strange and very interesting couple. The husband is a very staunch Buddhist who even became a temporary monk. And the wife is a very staunch Catholic. And they are very tolerant of each other. In fact, the husband goes to church with the wife, and the wife comes to the temple. The wife bows to me, and also she even invited me to her house to do dana. And when the husband died of cancer, she even called me and asked me to share merits with him. Anyway, his wife, after the husband passed away and we were having dana, she came and then she asked me about karma. She said, I don't understand this law of karma, you know. There's this nun that I know of. She's a vegetarian. She stays up on the hill by herself, meditates using beads to recite the name of the Buddha. She's just a holy person. And how could she be a victim of cancer? This nun died of cancer also. But that's not very strange. Even people like Krishnamurti. Do you know Krishnamurti? He's a very famous contemporary philosopher and spiritual leader. When he gives a lecture, thousands of people will be listening. And he talks about being mindful, being aware of the present moment, being free from thoughts. Things which are very Buddhistic in nature, although he does not claim to be a Buddhist. I mean, he also died of cancer. Then Swami Rama was a very famous and very powerful Swami, an Indian yogi, mystic yogi who had a lot of psychic powers, and also very famous because he could speak English very well, and established a Himalayan study center in US, and he also died of cancer. Well, the law of karma works in very strange ways, because with our normal intelligence, we are not able to see the past and see what we have done. Although we may be very holy and virtuous persons right now, we may have been culprits in the past, and we have to pay for it. So even being virtuous, being famous, also is not a sure security for you. Eventually you have to be ill. Eventually you have to age. Eventually you have to die. So what does the Buddha have to say about mutual care and sure security? Let me read to you a sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha. It's from Satipatthana Samyutta, Sutta number 19, which is called Sedaka Sutta. At one time, the Buddha was dwelling among the Sumbas, where there was a town of the Sumbas named Sedaka. And there the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, once in the past, an acrobat set up his bamboo pole and addressed his apprentice, Meda Katalika, thus. Meda Katalika is a Pali word and its meaning is frying pan. So the name of his apprentice is Frying Pan. Okay? So he says, Frying Pan, come, climb the bamboo pole and stand on my shoulders. Then his apprentice replied, yes, teacher. And he climbed up the bamboo pole and stood on the teacher's shoulders. Unquote. I wonder if any of you have been to Penang before. Have you seen the Chingay procession? You know what is Chingay procession? In Penang, they have these giant bamboo poles, 20, 30, 40 feet high, and then they perform this acrobatic act. Men would carry this on their palm and balance it, or put it on the chin, or they would transfer it from one person to another, shoulder to shoulder, or chin to chin. So it's a sort of an acrobatic act. So in India, they have something like that, but this is balancing on his shoulder, and then the apprentice will climb up to the top and balance on it. Okay, let me continue. The acrobat then said to the apprentice, Frying Pan, you protect me, dear Frying Pan, and I'll protect you. Thus, guarded by one another, protected by one another, we'll display our skills, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. Unquote. So what do you think? Did the acrobat say the right thing? Is it true that if the apprentice protects the teacher and the teacher protects him, then both of them will be safe? That sounds reasonable? Okay, let's get back to the sutta. Quote, when this was said, the apprentice, Frying Pan, replied, that's not the way to do it, teacher. You protect yourself, teacher, and I'll protect myself. Thus, each self-guarded and self-protected will display our skills, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. Unquote. Now, which one is correct? The teacher or the apprentice? Okay, those who think that the teacher is correct, hands up. Quick, quick. Those who think that the apprentice is correct, hands up. Oh, a lot of you sitting on the fence, huh? No opinion, don't want to be wrong, is it? Okay, let's see what the Buddha says. Quote, there's a method there, the Blessed One said. It's just as the apprentice, Frying Pan, said to the teacher, I will protect myself, bhikkhus. Thinking thus, should the establishments of mindfulness be practiced. I will protect others, bhikkhus. Thinking thus, should the establishments of mindfulness be practiced. Protecting oneself, bhikkhus, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects oneself. Unquote. So what the Buddha says is, he's siding with what the apprentice said, that you should protect yourself. The teacher protects himself and the apprentice protects himself, then they will both be safe. How is that possible? You see, the acrobat or the teacher is on the floor and he is balancing the pole. And he's got to make sure that he keeps his balance, right? If he just goes off balance, his poor apprentice up there will drop. Similarly, the apprentice up there also must not be fidgety. If he fidgets here and there, the poor teacher also will lose balance and both of them will get hurt. So each of them must do their own part. Be mindful and aware of what you're doing down there and the apprentice up there. And if each of them were to do their own thing, then both of them will be safe. So the Buddha is using this as a simile to tell monks, if you want to protect yourselves, practice the four foundations of mindfulness, the four establishments of mindfulness. If you want to protect others, practice the four foundations of mindfulness or the four establishments of mindfulness. Let me continue. And how is it, bhikkhus, that by protecting oneself, one protects others by the pursuit, development, and cultivation of the four establishments of mindfulness. It is in such a way that by protecting oneself, one protects others. Okay, let's stop here for a moment and let me explain to you what is meant by the establishment of mindfulness. What is mindfulness and what do you mean by establishing mindfulness? Mindfulness is an English translation of the Pali word sati. Now, sati is normally defined in the Pali canon as the ability to remember things that has been done long ago. So one of the characteristics of sati is the ability to remember. Another one is its ability to remind you to do things. If you look in the English dictionary at the word mindful, you will find that its meaning is quite different from what the word sati means. In a normal English dictionary, you will see that the word mindful means being careful. Right? Be mindful of what you're doing. Be careful of what you're doing. It does not have any connotations of memory, of reminding yourself or remembering things that you've done in the past. But mindfulness has become a special Buddhist terminology now in the field of practice. And when we use the word mindfulness, we actually mean not only the ability to remind yourself to do things that you're supposed to do and not to do things that you're not supposed to do, but also the quality of being careful, of doing things carefully, meticulously. It also connotes a third thing, which is awareness, being aware of what you're doing. So nowadays, when we use the word mindfulness, we mean reminding yourself to be aware of what you're doing. In the scriptures, when we talk about satipatthana or the establishment of mindfulness, we refer to four categories, four things that one should remind oneself of. Remind yourself to contemplate the body as the body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and phenomena as phenomena, or natural principles as natural principles. In Pali, we will call that kaya nupassana, contemplating body as body, vedana nupassana, contemplating feelings as feelings, citta nupassana, contemplating mind as mind, dhamma nupassana, contemplating dhamma as dhamma. And dhamma is a word that has got a whole lot of meanings, but in this particular case, it means the principles of nature as taught by the Buddha. But why did the Buddha say that by practicing these four establishments of mindfulness, you are protecting yourself as well as protecting others? That's because mind is the forerunner of all things. Whatever we say and do is a result of what we think and our intentions. If you are able to watch your mind, then you will be able to restrain your speech and action. Because usually we speak after what we think. But many people, when they don't watch their mind, they speak their mind, so to speak. When you speak your mind without being mindful or aware of your mental state, then sometimes you get into trouble because you are not sensitive to circumstances at that time. So the whole practice of establishment of mindfulness is to provide you a reference point so that you can follow or observe the behavior of your mind. And as you understand more and more of the behavior of your mind, then you can restrain the mind. You can watch your emotions as they arise and you can control them instead of letting them control you. When your emotions control you, you begin to say and do things that may be hurtful to yourself and to others. If you look at what's happening around the world nowadays, if you watch CNN news or whatever, you will see that a lot of violence and a lot of things are happening in the world. And where do all these come from? Where do all these stem from? You know, a lot of wars, a lot of battles, a lot of conflicts are going on in the world precisely because people are not able to control their minds. A lot of world wars happen merely because the world leaders feel insulted. They felt insulted, and so they send their forces to show how great they are. Recently, there was this big uproar about this cartoon about Muslims, and that created a lot of repercussions in this world among the Muslim population. I think the Muslims invaded the Dutch embassy in a Muslim country. And then the Muslim soldiers had to shoot the Muslims who were invading the embassy. So in the end, who is losing? Right? And it's because of fanaticism. One is not able to control their emotions, one is not able to control our thoughts, that we get into trouble. So that's why the Buddha says, if you can control yourself, if you can protect yourself by controlling your thoughts and emotions, by restraining them, being aware of them, then you take care of others as well. Right? You don't cause conflict, you don't cause people to be hurt. When you say something because of negative emotions, because you are not able to restrain yourself, then you hurt somebody. And because that somebody is hurt, he will try to seek revenge and will do something to hurt you back. Right? But if you are able to restrain yourself, able to catch your emotions on time, then you maintain peace all around. Not only within your family, but also among your colleagues and other people as well. Right, so if you want to take care of others, take care of yourself. Be aware of your mind so that you can control your speech and actions. Do things that are wholesome and avoid unwholesome speech and actions. The only way that you can do that is by catching the mind in time before it gets out of hand, before it gets expressed in words or in action. So this is one way of interpreting how, by practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, one protects oneself, and by protecting oneself, one also protects others. But the commentary has a different interpretation. The Buddha was actually giving this talk to monks. So the commentary gave a more narrow interpretation, more suitable for monks. It says that if a monk is very serious in meditation, then he will practice seriously and eventually he will become liberated, become an arahant. Then when he does so, he will inspire others to gain confidence in him, will inspire others to practice, and when devotees have faith in a well-behaved or highly attained monk, then they will be assured of a good rebirth in heaven. There are 2 interesting stories to illustrate this point. One is how an arahant can inspire another person to understand the Dhamma and also attain enlightenment. Venerable Assaji was one of the first disciples of the Buddha who became an arahant. Soon after he became an arahant, the Buddha sent him away together with 59 other arahants to preach the Dhamma that's beautiful in the beginning, the middle and the end. An arahant is one who has eradicated all defilements. So there's no more greed, no more attachment, no more hatred, no more disappointment, no more pride, no more conceit in him. He is perfectly cool and calm, pure in his mind. So when a person is pure in his mind, it is shown in his outward appearance. He becomes very composed and his complexion is very bright and serene. So one day he was going for Pindabat, going for alms round, walking around the street, and then he met a wanderer by the name of Upatissa. Upatissa was also a truth seeker. He was looking for a meaning of life. He was looking for truth, an end to suffering. And when he saw this Venerable Assaji walking for alms round, immediately he knew that this person is enlightened, because he looked so pure and so calm and so composed and so serene. He approached him and asked who his teacher was and what is his teacher's teaching. So Venerable Assaji was very modest. He said that I'm a new monk, I don't know very much about the teachings, but I just know a little and I can share with you. And he just gave a very short 4-line stanza saying that his teacher has taught that things arise because of a cause, and there is also a way that leads to the cessation of things that arise because of a cause. That's all he said. The moment Upatissa heard that, he became enlightened. He got the first stage of enlightenment. He became a Sotapan. Now, Upatissa is none other than our Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha's right-hand man, and among his disciples, he's the one who is foremost in wisdom. So at that time, he was called Upatissa. He was not a monk in the Buddha's teaching yet. He was a wanderer of another sect. And because he met Venerable Asachi and he was so impressed by his external demeanor, he was inspired to ask him the Dhamma and he got enlightened. So the commentary says that by protecting himself, by meditating and becoming an Arahant, he has helped to protect Upatissa, protect him from falling to the woeful realms and encouraging him to attain Arahantship eventually. Another interesting story can be found in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 31, which is called the Chula Gosinga Sutta. There in that sutta, 3 monks, Venerable Anuruddha, Venerable Nandiya and Venerable Kimbila, were staying together in a forest that's called Gosinga Sala Tree Wood. Maybe it was a forest reserve, maybe it was a special park that was designated for ascetics to use. So there was a caretaker there. One day the Buddha was walking towards that forest and this caretaker saw the Buddha coming and he went towards the Buddha and he said, Samana. Samana means recluse or ascetic or monk. Please do not come into this forest and disturb these 3 sons of good family. They are living together very harmoniously. Please don't come and disturb them. It's very interesting because he didn't even know that there was a Buddha that was coming. And Buddha is their teacher. So he stopped him from coming. From this story, which is in the suttas, we can see that the Buddha is very much like a human being. Some people say that the Buddha is about 3 times as high as a normal human being. If he had been a giant, then this caretaker wouldn't have mistaken him for another common ascetic. So he was actually a normal human being. He was walking towards the forest and the caretaker went to stop him. Luckily at that time, Venerable Anuruddha was outside and he saw this caretaker stopping the Buddha from coming to visit them. And quickly he went to the caretaker and said, Friend, please do not say that to our master. He is our teacher. Please allow him to come to the forest. So he went to receive the Buddha, invited him to where the other monks were. And the Buddha had a conversation with the 3 monks and he asked them how they lived together. And they said that they lived very harmoniously in noble silence and they were practicing most of the time. They led a very meditative life. Each of them were absorbed in their own meditations. And they had all also attained to Arahantship. However, although they kept noble silence and they did their own thing, did their own meditation, every 5 days, once every 5 days, they would have a whole night discussion on the Dhamma. So when the Buddha heard that they were living very harmoniously, although there were 3 of them, all were living as though they had one single heart, one single mind, he was very happy and he congratulated them and he left. As he left the forest, a yakka by the name of Diga Parajana met the Buddha. You know what's a yakka? A yakka is supposed to be a demon, a very fierce spirit. So this spirit by the name of Diga Parajana, he approached the Buddha and he said, let me read a quotation from the Majjhima Nikaya. It is a gain for the Vajjans, Venerable Sir, a great gain for the Vajjan people, that the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, dwells among them, and these 3 clansmen, the Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Nandiya, and the Venerable Kimbila. Unquote. When the earth gods heard this yakka saying that, they also repeated that. And then what they said was heard by the gods of the heavens of the 4 great kings. And then from there, the gods of the 33, Tawatingsa, different heavens, all also heard this. And so at that time, the fame of these 3 men went up right to the top heavens. The Buddha said, so it is, Diga, so it is. And if the clan from which those 3 clansmen went forth from the home life into homelessness should remember them with confident heart, that would lead to the welfare and happiness of the clan for a long time. Unquote. And he said not only the clansmen, if the other relatives or their friends, or the villagers, or the people from the town, the people from the country, or anyone, any god or any human beings who thought highly with faith about these three meditating monks, then it will also be for the happiness and welfare for a long time. Quote, if the world with its gods, its maras and its brahmas, this generation with its recluses and brahmins, its princes and its people, should remember those three monks with confident heart, that will lead to the welfare and happiness of the world for a long time. See, Diga, how those three clansmen, how those three monks are practicing for the welfare and happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the good welfare and happiness of gods and humans. Unquote. This sutta may be a bit strange to some Buddhists who are more socially engaged. You see, these three monks are not doing anything. They are just staying together in the forest and spending most of their time meditating. They are not going out giving Dharma talks. They don't go and open up a Sunday school. They don't go and start a welfare home. They don't go and open a library. They don't go out and help do social service. They are just staying together, doing their own thing, meditating and getting absorbed in their own jhanas and their own attainments. And yet the Buddha says they are practicing for the welfare and happiness of gods and men for a long time, for a long-term happiness. So, more socially engaged Buddhists, especially those from the Mahayana, find it difficult to accept what the Buddha said. But this is the words of the Buddha. So that's why the Buddha says, by protecting yourself, you protect others. Because these men are pure, they have become arahants. When other people who are non-arahants, who are not practitioners, think with faith and confidence in arahants, then for them, that is good merits that will ensure that they can go to heaven in the next life, even though they don't practice. They just have good thoughts about highly enlightened people. So this is another interpretation of how, by taking care of oneself, you can protect others. There are also many cases of yogis who, after a retreat, when they go back home, find that meditation has helped them a lot. I'll tell you a couple of stories. One was a very hot-tempered woman. She had difficulty getting along with her teenage daughters. Teenage at the time when they want to rebel against the mother. But after she went back from her first meditation retreat, she found that she could control herself. And then because she did not flare at them and react to what the daughters are doing, the daughters also were amazed. And because of that, they also thought that something is wrong with their mom. How come she's not angry with her? She's not shouting at her this time. But because she was able to control herself, that also changed the relationship. She was also able to accept them for what they are. This generation gap is a timeless problem, part of human psychology and human suffering as well. We Buddhists have got a tool for you to try to smoothen it. If you're a meditator, you're able to control your emotions and able to accept people for what they are, then this can be alleviated. The reason is that parents have been so used to telling their children what to do. Right? From very young, they've been very obedient. You tell them to do anything, they will do. But when it comes to this teenage age, it's different. It's a time when their hormones are growing and their organs are maturing. It's a time that their mentality is also changing. They don't want to listen to you your whole life. They also have their own way of thinking. So you must learn to be able to accept that. That's one thing. You must learn to relinquish the authority and accept your children for what they are. And one way of being able to do that is check your emotions, because it's not easy to cure old habits. Another woman also was a very hot-tempered woman. And she was also a very talkative woman. She used to be going around talking to people, chatting and gossiping. But after a retreat, when she found that these were all very frivolous talk, very useless dispensing of energy, she became quieter and more composed in her behavior. And most of all, many of them say that they have improved their relationships. A lot of women are a bit scared when their husbands go for retreats, because they feel that after he meditates already, he wants to become a monk, and then he will run out on me, I have to take care of the children. But in fact, many wayward men after they have gone through a retreat, come back and they become good husbands. You know why? Because they found that, when you are mindful, you begin to understand yourself, your true nature. Usually, we are always looking outwards. We are always saying that the other person is wrong. We never point the finger at us. We always point the finger at others. But when you're meditating, and all these thoughts arise in you, and all your kilesas arise in you, you cannot run away from them. So the Buddha says, develop concentration, monks. One with a concentrated mind sees things according to reality. There's also another interesting account of what Goenka did in India. You know who is Goenka? Goenka ji is an Indian who was born in Burma, a very staunch Hindu, who belongs to a tycoon business family in Burma. That was before the military took over. He was very rich and he was flying all over the world, but he had this problem with migraine. Couldn't cure his migraine. He went to all the doctors, all the specialist doctors in Germany, in the United States, in Japan. Nobody could cure his migraine. Finally, someone in Burma, when he came back to Burma, someone said, I know that there's a meditation center called International Meditation Center. It seems that they teach meditation, and I've heard of people getting cured of diseases, ailments because of meditation. So why don't you give it a try? But he was a Hindu, he's not a Buddhist, a very staunch Hindu. Then he said, okay, why not? Just give it a try. There they have a 10-day retreat. And it's not like SBS, we got nice place or there. Whenever you're bored, you go there, you look at the scenery, you look at the lights in Taiping Town, and then you can come down. There they lock you in a little cell. And you're supposed to meditate inside there. It's very hot, it's sweating all over. So after the first 2 or 3 days, he wanted to run away. Could not calm down his mind. But after he persisted through the 10 days, miraculously he cured his migraine for good. So eventually he became a Buddhist, a very staunch Buddhist, and is now a world famous meditation teacher of the Ubakin tradition. One day he returned to India and he started to teach meditation in India, and he became famous. Several years ago, there was a prison director general. She's a woman and she's got a lot of compassion for the convicts. She says that these convicts, you put them in jail, and if you go and give them proper rehabilitation program, when they come out of jail, they're going to commit the same crimes again and they're going to go back there. So she says there must be a way where we can try to rehabilitate them. So she was looking around and asking around, and then one of the prison guards told her how he had changed because he attended this retreat conducted by Goenka ji. He said he was the hot-tempered person, very selfish. But after he attended the retreat and came back, he was a changed person. He became more loving and more considerate to his family and his wife. And so she decided to give it a try. So a miraculous thing happened after the first retreat for the prisoners. The prisoners have always been denying themselves. They have always been saying that they never did anything wrong. They were jailed unjustly. And it was the people who framed them. They always say that. They say, I never committed any crime, I'm innocent. They always fool themselves without their knowing it. So when they go for this meditation retreat, when their mind becomes concentrated, they cannot run away from their own mistakes. All these things will surface. They call it sankharas. When you meditate, all the bad things that you did will surface. And you see for yourself with objectivity. And there's no running away from it. In fact, after the retreat, some of the hardcore prisoners even request to be put in solitary confinement. You know what solitary confinement? They put you in a little room, then shut you off from the rest. You're not supposed to communicate with anybody, just give you food. And they prefer to stay there to meditate rather than to go and mix with the other prisoners who are not meditators. Okay, anyway, you see, by protecting yourself, you protect others. That's how it is. And when you learn how to control yourself, your emotions, then you actually help to protect others as well. Another interesting thing is also when you meditate, all the good things and the bad things arise in you. You're not a totally evil person. You have bad thoughts, but you have good thoughts as well. You want to do good things. When you get some concentration, you think of your family, you want to ask your mother to come, your father to come, your friends to come. These are also good thoughts. Then you find that, wow, all these things, they just come and go and come and go. I have practically no control over them. Then, when you see all these things arising and passing away within you, you begin to become more considerate. You know that the next person is also the same. He also has a lot of good things and bad things arising and passing within himself. But he's not a meditator, he's not aware of it. But you are a meditator, you know. And because of that, you can be more patient, you can be more forgiving, you can understand others better. So in that way, by protecting yourself, you also protect others. You don't go and antagonize people, you can forgive them for the wrongs that they did. Now, let me continue with the second part. And how is it, bhikkhus, that by protecting others, one protects oneself? By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and sympathy. It is in such a way that by protecting others, one protects oneself. Unquote. So, there are 4 things that you need to do in order to protect others. What are they? The first one is patience. Second is harmlessness. Third is loving kindness. And the fourth is sympathy. Okay. Let me give you the commentary's interpretation of what this means. Because this talk was given to monks, they give a more narrow interpretation. They say that when these monks meditate on the 3 Brahma Viharas, you know what are the 3 Brahma Viharas? The divine abodes. Metta, or loving kindness, Karuna, or compassion, and Mudita, or sympathetic joy. You know metta, loving kindness. You know compassion. Compassion is when somebody is suffering and then you have the thought of wanting to relieve that person of suffering. Mudita is sympathetic joy. It means that if you see somebody being successful in business or in his exams, doing better than you don't feel envious or jealous, but you say sadhu, sadhu from the bottom of your hearts. You're happy because he is successful. That is sympathetic joy. So if monks meditate on these 3 things and attain jhanas, attain mental absorption, it's a very concentrated state of mind. And from there, they practice the 4 satipatthanas, doing vipassana, being aware of whatever that arises. Then, eventually, they become arahants. They are liberated. So when you practice metta, compassion, and sympathetic joy, you are actually protecting others in a sense. And then, by protecting others, because you get concentrated and you practice vipassana, you get liberated and you are purified. And that means protecting yourself. Another way of looking at self-protection is that eventually, when you get liberated, all your defilements are eradicated. Greed, hatred, delusion, envy, jealousy, conceit, all these are eradicated. And these defilements are our actual enemies. Our enemies are not external, It's because of these defilements that we get into trouble. They are our true enemies. So by meditating and purifying yourself, you conquer your enemies, and that's why you protect yourself. Now, I would like to give a more general interpretation rather than such a narrow one. Earlier on I said that by the practice of the 4 satipatthanas, if you are able to watch your mind, watch your emotions, watch all the thoughts that arise in you, then you become more considerate because you understand that other people also function the same way. They also have defilements that arise in them. They also have good thoughts, wholesome thoughts that arise in them. So you become more considerate and you can be more patient. Patience means the ability to accept another person for what he or she is. So that applies also to parents and teenagers. You have to accept that your boy has grown up now. He's not your little boy anymore. He's not going to listen to every word that you say. He's got his own mind. He wants to do things his own way. Of course, teenagers should also respect the fact that their parents have been sacrificing a lot for them. Right? When you feel that your hormones are working on you, you should try to observe your emotions and try to check them. So it works both ways. Both parents and children have to do their own jobs. Now, I want to share one story of one of our members. One day she was sharing during one of our meditation sessions. We had a group discussion after meditation. She was saying that she has this very bad habit. She'd be walking in Red Gardens one day, taking a morning walk, and then she'd just glance up and see another woman coming, and then she would say, "Oh, what an ugly looking woman. See, the mouth is out of shape, the eye is too small, too slanting, cheekbones too high." You know, all of these comments will just come out. And then immediately after that, she will feel very sorry. How can I be so judgmental? So actually, she is being judgmental on another person as well as judging herself for being judgmental. Right? So by being judgmental, either way, either judging another person or judging yourself, you're not helping anyone. So what's the best thing to do? To be aware of the emotions as they arise. So even if you're angry, if you have bad thoughts, if you're judgmental, just be aware of the thoughts as they arise. And let them go. Don't dwell on them. Don't criticize yourself for being bad, because that itself is a defilement. So being patient means being patient not only with other people but with yourself as well. Sometimes we can be patient and forgiving with regard to other people, but we can be very hard on ourselves. Sometimes it's more difficult to forgive yourself than to forgive others. This is something that we must learn, that our thoughts, our emotions, our actions actually do not belong to us. The Buddha taught anatta, right? That is non-self. They come about because of conditions. And if we want to undo them, we have to be objective and we have to go beyond creating more conditions. Patience is of utmost importance. When somebody inflicts harm to you, say something very hurtful to you, you have to exercise patience in order not to retaliate, right? But before that, you need to have mindfulness. You need to be mindful, to remind yourself that you have to watch your mind, and if your mind reacts to what the other person is doing to you, then you must catch it on time so that it doesn't get out of hand. Now, somebody may say something hurtful to you, and you feel hurt. If you are mindful, you will be able to watch or observe that feeling of being hurt within yourself. And that feeling is both mental, emotional, as well as physical. Why? How is it physical? When you're hurt, what do you feel? There's congestion in your heart, right? You feel very uncomfortable, indigestion, feel heat around the solar plexus area. And then when you think about it, then you will get headache, very tense in your head and your forehead area. These are the physical manifestations of emotions. Although emotions happen at a mental level, they are physically manifested in our body. So sometimes it's not so easy to watch emotions, because when you try to watch emotions at the mental level, you tend to get caught up in what is making you unhappy, what is making you angry, what is making you hurt, in the subject of your thoughts, of your emotions. So instead of watching the mental aspect of emotions, it may be better for beginners to watch the physical manifestations of our emotions, which is congestion in your heart area, the feeling of indigestion, the feeling of heat. Watch it as a physical phenomena. As you watch it, then your mind is distracted from what is making you angry, what is making you hurt. Then you don't think so much about it and you cool down. That's why there's this Western advice given to people who get angry. They say that when you get angry, count from 1 to 10. Right? Have you heard of that? That is because when you count 1 to 10, your mind is thinking of 1, 2, 3, 4. It's distracted from what is making you angry. That's why you can cool down. So it's the same principle. When you're angry, you're hurt, or you don't want to think of what is making you angry or what is hurting you, you watch your physical sensations in the body. And that's the secret of having a peaceful mind. To give you an example, when I was in Taipei, an old lady came to see me. She lives at the foothill where we were staying. Actually, she came back from KL because she's staying with her son in KL. Now, she's quite illiterate, but her son is an engineer. He got married to a professional who is an architect. The daughter is an accountant. So all the children are all professionals. So they have got big houses, they have got good cars, and they've got children. And this old lady, she says, I should be happy, right? I got everything. I got a daughter-in-law, I got grandchildren, I got cars, and everything in my house is well furnished. I got TV to watch, and yet I don't feel happy. Why? Because I cannot control my mind. You know, when I've got nothing to do, I just sit down and I start to worry for no reason. So when people suffer from insomnia, people suffer from worry, then how do they get out of it? It's quite simple. The principle is simple, but whether you can do it or not is another matter. As you all know, all our five senses, the eye, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the tongue, and our body, can only be aware of present objects. Right? You can only see things of the present moment. You can't see things with your eyes of the future. Nor can you see things with your eyes of what you have seen before in the past. Right? Same goes to all the other organs. With your ears, you can't hear things that you have not heard before. Neither can you hear things that you have heard before with your ear. So the five senses can only take present objects. But when you are sleeping at night and your five senses are all shut off and you're having a nice dream, right? You can still see, you can hear, you can taste, you can talk, you can enjoy yourselves in your dream. What is doing that? Your mind. Alright? So your mind can actually take objects of the past, of the future, of the present, and even time-freed objects that are not connected with time. They could be just fantasizing creations of the mind, imaginations, hallucinations. The mind can do all these sort of things. So a person who is worried, a person who cannot sleep, is because he has too many thoughts, and these thoughts are all thinking of the past, future, or fantasizing or imagining. So if you want to cut off those thoughts, what do? Come back to the present moment. And how do you come back to the present moment? Be aware of your body. Watch your breath, watch your heart, watch your solar plexus area. When you're worried, you will find that it's very congested. It's very heaty here, this area. Feel all the sensations in your body. If you are sleeping, lying down, you cannot sleep because of insomnia, lie down and watch your rising and falling. If you cannot watch your rising and falling when you're sitting down, then you won't have any problems when you're lying down, because the rising and falling movements are very, very clear when you lie down. You can watch the rising and falling as you lie down in your bed. You could watch the touch points of your body in contact with your bed, moving from the top of the head slowly down, your shoulders, your back, your arms, your buttocks, back of the thighs, to the back of calves, to your heels, up to your toes, through the whole body. When you do that, you'll find that eventually your thoughts will become less and less, because you're not thinking of the past or the future, or you're not imagining anymore, and you'll calm down and you fall asleep. Non-Buddhists tell you that if you cannot sleep, what do? Count sheep, right? One sheep jump over the fence, 2, 3, 4. So that's another way of distracting your attention from your thoughts. But still, that is a creation. It's not in the present moment. You are creating sheep jumping over the fence. That also involves energy, effort. So this one, not much effort. You just be natural and just watch the things in your body. So this is a very, very important tool for peace of mind. If you want peace of mind, if you have got too much stress because you got too many things in your mind, too many deadlines to meet, and you cannot meet the deadlines, and you're thinking, what am I going to do? I cannot meet the deadline, my boss is going to come after me, and so forth. And all these thoughts are actually creating the stress in you. Not because you cannot meet the deadline, but because of these thoughts. Okay? So, when you get into such situations, remember this golden principle. Try to come back in the present moment, sit quietly, with your eyes closed, relax your body. You don't have to sit cross-legged. You can sit in your office on your armchair. Maybe after your lunch, take an extra 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Close your eyes and consciously relax your whole body. Relax your body, and after you've relaxed your body, watch your breathing, rising and falling, or the nose tip. And you will find that it's very calming and very rejuvenating. I once heard an account of an American executive. He must have done some sort of meditation before and found that it was very beneficial for him. So he decided to give his staff an extra 10 minutes during lunch break. He tells them, you don't have to start work yet. All you need to do is sit down at your desk, close your eyes, and watch your breath. And then, you know what happened? The efficiency of his staff increased because of the extra 10 minutes of lunch break. There's also another very interesting story of an American school teacher. One day she walked into class and all the kids were very noisy. They were brawling with one another. So she came in and said, okay, everybody, quiet, sit down. Now all of you just sit down at your desk and just keep quiet and just stay still for 1 minute. Just watch your breath. And so all the kids all followed and we remained silent for just 1 minute, not very long, just 1 minute to watch the breath. And then she managed to quieten the class and she started her lesson. Next day, she came back to the same class and then all the children requested her to give them 1 minute just to do meditation out of their own accord without her forcing them. They just say, teacher, we just love it. Can you please give us 1 more minute? These are American kids and they've never heard of meditation before. The first time that they are introduced to something that is introspective. In American culture, you're always thinking of externals, getting things, enjoying yourself. But this is the first time that they have been taught how to do introspection, to be within yourself and to be in the present moment. So no wonder the Buddha says, if you protect yourself, then you will protect others. Right, so patience is important because when somebody insults you and you're able to catch your emotions on time, then you can be patient and forgive the person for his ignorance, for his foolishness, or for what he has done. Because of patience, you can practice harmlessness. Why do people become violent? Sometimes it's because of retaliation. Sometimes it's because of greed or hatred. To give examples of violence because of greed, like robbers, snatch thieves, they resort to violence because they want something. To give examples of violence because of hatred, religious fanatics, they will go to all ways and means to justify their anger by saying that they are killing in the name of their God. In fact, if the God is so compassionate and so merciful, I'm sure the God would not want to see other beings being hurt. So it's just human limitations, human weakness that tries to justify the violence that they inflict on one another. But if you practice patience, then you automatically practice harmlessness. For example, in Afghanistan, some years ago, they wanted to blast the Bamiyan Buddha images, which were the tallest in the world and several centuries old. All the Buddhists in the world gave their protest only verbally in the press, and they tried to persuade the Taliban government to refrain from doing that. If not for religion, then for the sake of archaeology, for the sake of preserving an ancient monument. But they did not listen to all these pleas, and they went ahead and blasted the Buddha images. And yet, the Buddhists did not retaliate. No Buddhists went to bomb them. They had to suffer for their own karma, and the Americans went there and bombed them. It seems that after they bombed the Bamiyans, it rained in that area, and it hasn't rained for many years. And so the Muslims are all very happy. They say, oh, it rains because God is happy that we have bombed these pagan images. Then the Buddhists will say, it rained because the Devas are sad that they have bombed the Buddha images. So, which one is right? Well, whoever is right, in the end, they got bombed by the Americans. And then the Americans, in the end, got 911. Had this incident in the World Trade Center. So, there's no end to violence. And if you keep on retaliating, you'll go on samsara, on and on and on. That's why the Israelis and the Palestinians have not been able to resolve their issue, because they kill one another, and then generation to generation, this grudge, this feud has been embedded in their whole DNA. So if you have patience, we are able to forgive others for the wrongs that they have done, then we can practice harmlessness very easily. We don't have to resort to violence. If you have patience and you practice harmlessness, then it's very easy also to practice loving kindness, right? Loving kindness is the feeling of wishing for the well-being and happiness of others without any ulterior motives. It's unconditional loving kindness. So if you have unconditional loving kindness, helping people who are in need, then you're actually protecting them in a sense, you're helping them. When you practice loving kindness in that way, you're helping others, you have good vibes of loving kindness around you, people will automatically come to help you when you are in need, or they have very positive relations towards you. So that's how, by protecting them, they will protect you. There are many stories of loving kindness, but I'm talking too much tonight, so I'll leave that to maybe another time when I come. The final thing is anudaya, sympathy. Sympathy is actually another word for compassion. Now, compassion is defined as the feeling that a good person has when he sees somebody suffering. If you're a sadist and you see somebody suffering, you feel very happy. But if you are a good person and you see somebody suffering, your heart melts and you feel sorry and you have sympathy for that person and you want to help. You want to relieve that person of suffering. Of course, compassion is not only emotional or mental, it is expressed in words and in action. You see one of your friends who is suffering because she's hurt by somebody or quarrel with a husband or a boyfriend or something, then out of compassion you can go and console her or him. And if you see somebody in the streets who got knocked down by a car, you have sympathy for that person, you go and help, call the ambulance or whatever. So that is very obvious that by helping them, one day if they do remember your good deed, they will always be grateful to you. So by practicing patience, harmlessness, loving kindness and sympathy, it's obvious that if the other party is grateful, then they will protect you in return. Even though they may not be grateful, you will not come to harm. And if you do come to harm, then you have to resort to what we call recollecting the law of karma. Sometimes things might seem to have no justice in this world. Some people may be framed for something that they did not do and they may have to suffer for it. But if you believe in the law of karma, then you will know that perhaps you had done this before to somebody else in the past and now you have to pay this back. It's a karmic debt. People who have faith, whether in the law of karma or in Allah or in God, can get solace and consolation. Those who believe in the law of karma, they say, well, what can I do? It's the law of karma. Those who believe in Allah will say, it is the will of Allah. Allah wants to test me, for me to surrender. Those who believe in God will say the same thing. So this is an opportunity for me to learn. Maybe God is testing me. I surrender to the will of God, to the will of Allah. So you surrender to the law of karma. So it's the same. Basically, it is how you orientate your thoughts. Positive thinking. Even better is thinking that every obstacle that you meet in life is the golden opportunity for you to improve yourself. Although in Buddhism we don't have the concept of yin and yang. Yin-yang is a Chinese principle of positive and negative, of male and female. That things are always in a balance of femininity and masculinity. So, although in Buddhism we do not have the principle of yin and yang, I would like to propose that in Buddhist meditative practice, there is a yin and yang that must be balanced. And what is the yang? Yang is masculinity and yin is femininity. The female aspect, soft, and masculine is hard. So, the masculine aspect of Buddhist meditation is vipassana meditation. Vipassana meditation is practicing mindfulness, awareness of things, of your five senses, of your thoughts. Why? Because in the final analysis, when you watch all these things that are happening in your senses, you will come to realize that there is no self involved. These are all just mere processes, mere phenomena that arise and pass away. So it becomes something very impersonal. If you're a pure vipassana meditator, one who just meditates along the guidelines of the Satipatthana Sutta, You may become someone very cold and indifferent because you see everything in terms of like atoms and molecules. There's no person, no I, no you. Imagine seeing your wife or your husband or your children just as atoms and molecules. You can't have loving kindness for atoms and molecules or mere processes and laws and principles, can you? So that's why this yang has to be balanced with metta. Metta or loving kindness is the yin of Buddhist meditation. When you practice loving kindness meditation, you do not think in terms of atoms and molecules anymore. You think in terms of concepts of people. You always radiate metta to someone whom you respect, you are grateful to whom you love, you care for, and even to your enemies if you are already skillful in evoking the sense of loving kindness, which you will not normally be able to do so. Normally when you think of an enemy or a nasty person, aversion or hatred will arise in you. But if you are skillful enough, you radiate metta to someone whom you care for, and then when it's very strong, you change the object to an enemy, you do not feel angry. You can still send metta to that person. So it's essential that if you want to balance your meditative practice, you should complement vipassana practice with loving kindness. And this is also implicit in what the Buddha said in the Sedaka Sutta. He says, by protecting yourself, you protect others. How do you do it? By practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. By protecting others, you protect yourself. How do you do that? By these 4 qualities of patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and compassion. So I hope that tonight's talk will be able to help you to realize the importance of this yin and yang of Buddhist meditation, and also will be able to enlighten you on what is true mutual care and true security. Because if you get terminal cancer and you are bedridden, what other things can you do? If you are in a coma, what other things can you do? Only your mind is there, and you can only practice meditation. You may think that a person who is in coma is unconscious, but that is not true. A person who is coma is unconscious with respect to his 5 senses, but his mind is still very much alert. There are many reports of people who were supposed to be clinically dead, and then they were revived and they came back to life. At that time, they recounted that when they were pronounced physically or clinically dead, they actually hear people and they could think still very clearly. And when they were supposed to be in a state of coma, their minds were still very active. Some people may be in another realm somewhere else, or they could be conscious of what is happening because they have an out-of-the-body experience. So it's very important to learn to watch your mind, because even though you may be skillful in watching your breath or your body sensations, what happens when you meet with an accident and then you lose the physical sensation of your body and there's only the mind left? If you are used to watching the breath, you can't find the breath there, and there's no breath, you can't find your body, there's no sensations. So you have to learn to watch your mind. So don't neglect watching the mind. Those of you who are trained in the Mahasi system, Mahasi method of meditation, tend to focus or give priority to watching the body, watching your movements, the rising and falling of the abdomen, the movements or whatever you're doing. But you tend to neglect watching how your mind reacts to all the external stimuli. So it's good that you have established yourself in watching the physical aspect of the body. And that is a very good reference point, a very good thing to anchor your mind to. And so, because you have already established that anchor, start to watch your mind. Every time watch your mind, bring it back. Watch your mind, bring it back. Watch your mind, bring it back. Then you can understand your mind and train yourself so that when you get into such situations when there's no more body, at least you know what to do. Right? You can still watch your mind, and you can also still create objects and send loving kindness to people, because that is a purely mental activity. You don't have to have the body, you don't have to have eyes or ears to be able to send metta. Okay, let us stop at this point.